Good morning, good afternoon. I would like to welcome EFE's many partners and alumni who have joined today, as well as newcomers to EFE. For those of you who are new to EFE, our mission is to create economic opportunities for unemployed youth in the MENA region, so they can create a bright future for themselves, their families, and their communities. This is our first event of the year, as EFE builds on the success from our 2020 Resilience Series. Our new series is about changing and charging forward to achieve even greater impact. Acceleration series, as we call it. I thank you all for joining, and if you are not already involved with EFE, check us out at www.efe.org and reach out to see how you can get involved. Today, we have an inspirational webinar with panelists whom we consider from the EFE family. Ms. Mariam Farag is Head of Corporate Sustainability and Social Impact on MBC, a TEDx speaker, award-winning advocate, advisor for youth development, diversity, and inclusion. She is an advisory board member for EFE in the UAE, has more than 20 years of experience in corporate and social change in the MENA region and globally. I had the opportunity to meet with Ms. Farag at work during several events she organized for EFE in Dubai, a dynamic person that advocates challenging decisions to make sure youth have their voices heard. Mr. Alqam is an EFE-Palestine graduate. He has a diploma in architecture, and when he started working, he was more interested in interior design. He took many different courses and has been working in this field for many years. He currently works as a freelancer. Ms. Amal Fahim Sadaq is an EFE-Palestine graduate. She has BA in Public Relations and Communication from An-Najah University in Palestine. She works as a copywriter and social media specialist at a company called Think Deep. Across the MENA region, EFE network members are working hard to bring diversity to the workplace. In 2019, EFE Jordan added an organizational KPI for 2020 to include more youth with disabilities in its programming. This made EFE staff to be more inclusive, and similar measures were taken by EFE Egypt and EFE Tunisia. And all other EFE members are introducing measures to inclusion of youth from diverse backgrounds. Although Palestine is geographically a small country, however, EFE-Palestine operates from 3 offices in Jerusalem, Ramallah, and Gaza. This is due to the geopolitical situation, and this in itself raises many challenges in movement of people, goods, and therefore affecting the rate of unemployment, especially for youth. There are over 40,000 youth graduating from Palestinian universities and colleges annually, and almost 7,000 new jobs opening annually. The math is easy. The challenges are huge. EFE-Palestine has more than 18,000 alumni whom it has positively impacted since its official establishment in 2009. EFE-Palestine's job training and placement program has graduated 10,000 Palestinian youth, 55% of whom are females, and has placed 70% in dignified jobs. In addition, EFE-Palestine with EFE Global launched its entrepreneurship program with over 1,000 youth graduating from its program in Palestine, and 400 Emirati females were empowered to launch their own enterprises in the UAE. To help university and vocational center students prepare for the future careers, while they are still at their university, the Finding a Job is a Job Fujij program was launched with over 7,000 alumni. This has been possible through our agreements with 13 Palestinian universities where EFE-Palestine sources its graduates from. We appreciate the constant support of our donors and over 1,000 employer partners, without whom we could not successfully pursue this important mission. Our alumni are employed in diverse sectors in specializations such as engineering, nursing, marketing, sales, customer service, digital marketing, hospitality, information technology, virtual jobs, and many others. As for training, our young entrepreneurs, EFE-Palestine has been in partnership with Al-Quds University, where youth are making use of the Al-Quds incubator in Jerusalem to develop their ideas and follow up on their startups. The year 2020 has been a difficult one globally due to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, EFE-Palestine has responded to this crisis by training 100 nurses in skills to serve the Palestinian health system. There are 93,000 persons with disabilities, which is 2.1% of the Palestinian population. EFE-Palestine has trained over 200 youth with disabilities in the past few years. We have a large, huge challenge ahead of us. I would like to move and ask Ms. Mariam Farag, and to benefit from her experience. Ms. Farag, why did MBC has been EFE's long-term strategic partner?
Thank you, Mr. Saro. Thank you so much for this wonderful introduction full of data and results and numbers. And it's really enriching because it just paved the way to my answer, in fact. MBC launched MBC Hope, which is its social corporate responsibility program, in 2013. And what we focus on is youth empowerment. Capacity building, preparing them for entering the job market and preparing them to find their dream job. But you just said it, you just mentioned it. 40,000 graduates in Palestine every year, and only 7,000 of them get employed or get the possibility of employment. Now imagine this scale over the entire region. The entire region has been bleeding of unemployment rates since 2011, since the crisis in so many countries. And in fact, this is our main focus when it comes to MBC. And Education for Employment, or EFE, their main focus and their main target is enabling youth and young people, whether they graduate university or not, whether they have the ability to go to university or not, is to prepare them for the job market. And right now, you just mentioned that not only the job market, but you're also preparing them to become entrepreneurs. So in 2015, when we joined hands with EFE, it was only natural that we partner with an organization that is not just regional, but also global, that cares about the youth, cares about the empowerment of the youth, the development of the youth, but not just about that, because you can find a lot of organizations that train youth and give them the right skills and the livelihood skills and the capabilities to prepare themselves for the job market. But rarely would you find an organization that actually gives you the opportunity to get an internship in a company or an industry, and to actually try to get your dream job, and not just placing you in a job, but helping you retain that job. I've seen it over the past years, working closely with EFE, be it in Palestine, Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and so on, how they actually, the staff works really hard on securing partnerships with corporates and private sector, even governments, to prepare the numbers of the young talents that you have in your capacity building and training programs to actually get a job in the end. So the return on investment is huge for a company or for a media conglomerate as MBC. We also wanted to get involved with EFE to spread the message, to spread the word, to give exposure and to showcase the successful model of EFE, and to inspire others to become partners of EFE and to join hands in really empowering the youth today, not tomorrow, but today, because this is when they need our help. So, you said we do the math, and the math was very simple for us. Real impact on ground. This is what we can see with EFE in the number of countries that they help, and they have offices in the region.
Thank you, Ms. Faraj. You have touched on the essence and the mission of EFE, and we believe that this is why you joined us, and you are working with us hand in hand to get the most done in the MENA region. A second question I have for you is, please give us your comments on people of determination and your opinion on the rights and inclusion of people with disabilities in the workplace.
Thank you. This is a very good question, and I'm quite impressed, in fact, with the information that you gave us today about EFE-Palestine training hundreds of youth or hundreds of people with disabilities or people of determination in Palestine. This is quite inspiring, because Palestine is going through its own challenges. So in fact, when I speak of real impact, this is what I'm talking about. You touch upon so many forgotten segments in society. When we're talking about people of determination, as we say in the UAE, or people with disabilities, I see a lot of opportunities. There are a lot of challenges, but I see a lot of opportunities. And I've witnessed a lot of organizations and private sector who have embarked on this journey with people of determination. And the return on investment was huge. Just this morning, in fact, I was visiting one of the global brands in Dubai. And I was, getting my coffee and some donuts for the kids. And this brand, in fact, they have employed people with determination, or people of determination, for the past couple of years. I see it in their shops. People with hearing disabilities, people with speech disabilities. And it's quite inspiring, because when you go to a shop, not only do you, in fact, engage with these wonderful people that are quite, passionate about what they do. They know how hard it has been for them to get a job, so they give it their utmost best. And it's quite inspiring. It just tells you that nothing is impossible. But it also tells you a lot about the brand that has taken that step forward positively and hired people of determination. It tells you about the brand, that they are socially responsible, that they are inclusive, and they are diverse. So as a customer, I want to go back to the shop. I want to be loyal to that brand. I want to be able to buy my coffee there because I know that I am a customer of a brand that is quite, they walk the talk, if you want. I've seen it in Egypt with another NGO and someone that is very dear to me, Dr. Muaz Shoudi, that has employed a lot of people on wheelchairs and even visually impaired in his call center in the food bank, the Egyptian food bank in Egypt, in fact. I've seen it with the Jordan office in EFE. We have taken upon ourselves at NBC inclusive and diversity policies long time ago. So it's not something that we need to tick the box. It's really something that all the private sectors, and not just the private sectors, academia, all the other sectors, public sector, and so on, they need to really have a sit down and have a heart to heart with their senior leadership and say, how can we actually be inclusive? How can we be diverse? Because inclusion and diversity is a huge topic. And some people do it to just take the box and say, oh, we have one person that is employed with us of people with disability, but he just sits or she sits there and does nothing all day, but we actually tick the box. So in fact, diversity and inclusion goes together. So when you employ someone, you really need to give them a chance and you need to believe in them. You actually need to train them. You actually need to include them in decisions. You need to make them feel that they are part of an organization and part of the impact and not just someone that's there to tick a box.
Thank you, Ms. Amal. Thank you very much for your kind words and your analysis of the situation. I would like now to move to and speak to Amal. And I would like to ask you the following question, Amal. Tell us how you were able to journey from unemployed to your first job. And how did your life change when you got your first job?
Thank you for this question. In fact, it's have not possible to join your first job because I faced many social difficulties, which that mean the Palestinian employer didn't accept the idea of employing disability people in your university major or any job in the private sector. On the other hand, the state and the roads is not fit until now to move my village, which is live and my workplace. But I support all that without attempt and progressive training, which that mean I used to transportation at the first time 1 day a week. After that, I used it 3 days a week, etc. Even I thought I used it every day a week. In February 2020, I have got a first job in a private sector, and I'm so glad of these opportunities because I convince our employees and people around me I could to move north and the middle of West Bank in this of sorry I could to move north to Middle West Bank independent myself.
That is actually what we want to hear from you, Amal. That is encouraging. That is determination. We know how difficult it is for moving around the West Bank with all the difficulties, but for you, there is nothing that stops you. Your determination got you your job and got you to where you are today. Please tell me and tell us actually, Amal, what made you study public relations and communication at the university?
I decided to study public relations and communication for two reasons. The first reason, my love to change. So I don't like the traditional option that restrict disability people on traditional careers or simple specialization is fit with with my ability, as I love linking and skill at the same time.
Amal, tell us about your current job. What do you do?
In current jobs, I work as copywriter and social media specialist at Think Deep Academy.
That is just wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much, Amal.
This position.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you addition points? Can I addition more points?
Yes, of course, of course. It is your floor. We want you to speak. Go ahead.
Yes, yes. This position made me feel a good for myself because of three reasons. The first reason is uh, the standard of accessibility is the standard of accessibility the standard of accessibility is selection based experience and skills without rather than appearance or professional knowledge. The second reason, my prove people around me opposite what they did accept from me, such as some of them expected they some of them expected my able to get the job and related to public relation and the other and the other of some and the other on the other hand, some of them they expected they expected complete my master degree directly when you finished my bachelor degree, because your opinion the honor student isn't able to practice scientific knowledge when he got during study. The last reason, the current job helped me to develop the hobby think and get more and get more opportunities in the same field in the freelance platform.
Okay, thank you very much, Amal. I know your determination is so strong that you said, I will speak in English, and you did speak in English. And we encourage that, and that is why we find you to be a special, and thank you for inspiring us. I would like to go to our next alumni and speak to Mr. Alqam, who has joined us and would like to make his contribution. Mr. Alqam, tell us how you were able to journey from unemployed to your first job, and how did your life change when you got your first job?
أول شيء يسعد مساكم جميعا. أول مرحلة بحياتي إني بعد ما تخرجت من الجامعة، طبعا ما في عنا كثير وظائف متاحة أو فرص عمل كثير متوفرة لخريجين الجامعات. الواحد بده
I will translate Alqam. Greetings to everybody. When I first graduated from the university, there were not a lot of job opportunities.
فبده يطور من ذاته ويكتسب مهارات عشان يلاقي أول وظيفة له ويشتغل فيها.
So someone had to develop his skills so that he could find a first job and work.
طبعا أول وظيفة للإنسان اللي بكون متخرج كثير من الجامعة كثير بتكون فخر إلها وبحسها إنها إشي كبير وإنه إنجاز كثير كبير إنه اكتسبها. هذا أول وظيفة إلها بتكون.
The first job that a young person that graduates finds is very important for him, and he is very proud of it. And that is something very important and special for him.
أول وظيفة إلي كانت مع الأستاذ اللي درسني بالجامعة بعد ما تخرجت تقريبا ب7 شهور وظفني عنده بالشركة.
My first job was to work with my lecturer professor at the university after 7 months.
طبعا أنا درست دبلوم هندسة معمارية وما صح لي فرصة إني أكمل بكالوريوس، فاشتغلت بالهندسة المعمارية تقريبا حوالي سنة أو سنتين.
I graduated with a diploma and was not able to continue to get a 4-year degree. However, I worked with my architecture diploma and continued to work for 1 or 2 years.
اشتغلت بعدها بالتصميم الداخلي، حبيت مجال التصميم الداخلي. كنت فترة من الزمن إني أشتغل لحالي وأتعامل مع الناس لحالي.
Afterwards, I started working as an interior designer, and I started working as a freelancer, and I enjoyed that.
طبعا أول راتب بكون لك من هاي الوظيفة بتحسه مع إنه بكون كثير قليل، بس بتحسه كثير كبير بالنسبة لإلك.
The first salary or pay that you get from your first job, although it is very little, but it is very important and it sounds very big for me.
الإشي اللي خلاني أدخل مجال التصميم الداخلي إنه أكثر استقلالية من التصميم من الهندسة المعمارية، وأغلب يعني المشاريع الهندسة المعمارية بتحتاج إنه يكون عندك مكتب ويكون عندك اسم بالنقابة، فالتصميم الداخلي بتقدر تشتغل فيه كمستقل لحالك.
The reason I started working as an interior designer is because it gave me the flexibility to, first of all, work freelance and not to have an office, not to be restricted to join the union. And that was an opportunity for me, and I followed it.
Okay.
Thank you. I would like now to ask you a second question. What has it been like to work as an architect, and what made you interested in interior design specifically? As you mentioned it, but give us some more details, please.
زي ما حكينا قبل شوي إني أنا ما كان عندي قدرة إني أكمل دراستي، ففتت في مجال التصميم الداخلي وحبيت هذا التصميم إنه أكمل فيه، وكان السبب الأكثر إنه في بلادنا فلسطين هان مش كثير التصميم الهندسة المعمارية بيجدوها يعني الأفراد بشكل شخصي.
Okay, thank you. The interior design work gives me more opportunity, and it gives me more personal satisfaction. Specifically, there are difficulties in Palestine with it, but I manage with the work. My last question to you, Alqam, will be, you mentioned that you are currently a freelancer, and we know being a freelance, it is difficult. How did COVID-19 pandemic affect your work?
فترة الكورونا الجميع تأثر، والعمل الحر يعني أكيد راح يتأثر، خصوصا إنك أنت يعني لازم تكون بالموقع، يعني تروح على الزبون وتشوف التفاصيل اللي بيحتاجها وتاخذ مقاسات للشغل اللي راح تشتغله.
Everybody was affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, especially in my work. I have to go and visit buildings, structures, homes, and I have to go take measurements, and there is a lot of personal contact there.
طبعا أنا حبيت إنه يكون إلي مكتبي الخاص ويكون شغلي الخاص فيه، لأنه بكون أكثر استقلالية وبتتحكم بنفسك، ما بكون عليك مدير، أنت بتكون مدير نفسك.
Of course, I wanted to work as a freelancer because I can be independent and I can be my own boss and I can do what I want.
طبعا قبل ما أتصاوب، أنا بال 2014 كانت إصابتي من جيش الاحتلال، في هاي الفترة كثير تأثرت وانقطعت عن العمل، وقعدت تقريبا 3 سنين بالمستشفى أتعالج، فهذا الإشي أثر على حياتي العملية كثير.
I was wounded in 2014 from a bullet, and that affected my life a lot because I was hospitalized for a long time, and almost for 3 years I was under hospitalization.
طبعا بعد ما صار الحادث معي ورجعت لحياتي الطبيعية، حاولت إني أرجع أمارس عملي وأرجع أمارس شغلي وأختلط في الناس وإني ما أنعزل عن الناس، فهذا الإشي يعني في إشي سلبي وإشي إيجابي. فالدافع اللي خلاني يعني إني أرجع لمسيرتي إنه بدك تكمل حياتك وتكمل مشوارك العملي.
After this period, it was very difficult, to go and meet people and be with people. But I was determined to meet people. I had to meet people. I had to be with people. It was very difficult for me, but I did my best, and I did overcome this period.
وإنه تثبت لنفسك وللي حواليك إنه صح صار معك إعاقة، بس أنت قد التحدي وبدك تكون قد التحدي يعني وتتحدى هذا الإشي اللي صار معك.
First of all, I had to challenge myself and to show myself that I can do and I can take this challenge, and to show the people around me that I can take this challenge. And of course, I did take the challenge, and I am now being who I want to be.
Okay.
Okay, shukran Alqam. Thank you very much
Welcome.
for this contribution. We really inspire, you really inspire us. Ms. Farag, I would like to come back to you and ask you, what is the impact of EFE's work that you have personally seen, and what makes EFE different?
First of all, I want to thank Amal and Alqam for sharing their stories, because every time I meet an EFE alumni or alumna, I get very inspired. So thank you so much for sharing your stories. Thank you, Amal, for being so determined and so full of motivation to speak in English, although it's not your first language, and I thank you for that. You did an amazing job. So your face should change to a smile, because I can see the stress on your face. You should be smiling and being so proud of yourself, because it's not easy to speak in a different language. Yeah. So be very, very proud. A lot of people around the world don't speak two languages. So today you should be proud. Yeah. Second, Alqam, يعني I'm gonna say it in Arabic. الحقيقة ألف حمد لله على سلامتك. وأنا فعلا فخورة بشباب زيك، لأنه العيشة في فلسطين مش سهلة، وكل يوم انتوا بتمروا بتحديات. فالحقيقة انتوا كشعب أصلا بيلهمني أنا شخصيا، لأنه مهما كانت التحديات انتوا برضو بتقوموا، وبرضو عندكم امل، وبتشوفوا بصيص من النور في الحياة. فيعني اشكرك جدا جدا ان انت فعلا النهاردة يعني معرفش ادتني كده انا نفسي امل. عارف honestly I meet so many since I was blessed and I was very lucky to join the EFE family in 2015. I've always been inspired with the stories, be it stories from Palestine, where it's extremely challenging for just to do your day-to-day life, to Saudi Arabia, to the UAE, to Egypt, to Jordan, to Morocco, to Tunisia, to Algeria. I'm always inspired, because I feel that the return on investment and the impact that EFE really continues to create around the region is wonderful. And it's not just impact of successful stories as Amal and Alqam and Ahmed and so many other people that I've met around. You impact us as corporates, you impact us as individuals, as human beings. You give us the hope that there is hope, because in a very in a region that is very troubled, we wake up on bad news, we sleep on bad news. The region itself is very challenging, with a lot of socioeconomic problems and poverty and hunger and unemployment and insecurity and we still prevail, and we still have people who believe in us, be it on a global level, our partners on a global level, our board members on a global level, our donors on a global level, but also on a regional level. To have an education for employment organization that still believes in youth and still believes in people, this is just, it's wonderful. I've seen one example, a story, Ahmed, in fact, that I've met several times in Egypt and even in the UAE. Ahmed did not speak a word of English. And one day we were having a big event in Cairo, and he went on stage to share his story in English, and then people asked him to switch to, no, in Arabic first, and then people asked him to switch in English, and he automatically switched in English so fluently, so eloquently, so confidently. This is what EFE does, and you keep inspiring me more and more. I had no idea that you had started a program for people with determination, for example. A couple of years ago, Jordan office started a program only for Syrian refugees. So you keep on really raising the bar when it comes to inclusion and diversity. And you keep raising the bar on how many people you want to help and how many people you want to reach out to. So my wish really is to know, how did Amal and Alqam find out about EFE? because we want to understand what can we do more to let people know about EFE and to raise the awareness on EFE and the work that they're doing, because we want a lot of the young people around the region to reach out to you. But we also want to create a bigger base for partners, because the partners are the ones that make it happen. And if you're listening now, we need more partners, we need more donors, we need more funding, because the impact is huge. We're actually changing people's lives. So, so that's just, just me. And honestly, I'm so inspired today and so honored to be meeting Amal and Alqam, because I know there's hundreds of Amals and Alqams around, and we need to tell their stories.
Thank you very much, Mariam. We have an anonymous attendee asking Alqam, do you see yourself working freelance forever? Alqam, السؤال إلك، بتشوف حالك إنك تشتغل في عمل حر ولا بتحب تشتغل في شركة؟
كعمل الشركة بتكون أفضل، لأنه بتكون العمل كفريق، والعمل الحر برضه منيح، بس إحنا هنا يعني في بلادنا بنجبر يعني إنه تكون نفسك بنفسك. أنت برضه أنت عشان معك يعني الإعاقة، يعني أغلب الناس يمكن ما تتقبلك عندهم، في لأنه عندهم أفكار إنه يعني أنت ما بتقدر تنتج زي الشخص السليم. فلهذا السبب يعني إنه تشتغل كعمل حر كثير كويس، لأنك أنت بتكون مالك نفسك، بتكون ملك حالك. أما العمل بشركة يعني برضو الثاني كويس، إنه أنت بتكون بروح الفريق، إنه بتتعاونوا، بتعتمد على المسؤولية العامة.
Of course, working as a freelancer is very good, and I like doing that. However, working in a company is more, reliable. You will get an income at the end of the month, and you are also. Alqam says that you will become part of a larger team that you work with, and you work together and give each other support. We have also another question, again for Amal and Alqam, saying that what was different from what EFE offered you from your university or college education? إيش الفرق بين الدراسة في الجامعة والدراسة أو التدريب مع EFE؟ إيش كان الفرق بيناتهم علقم؟
EFE يعني اكتسبت منها شغلات عملية، شغلات بتمس الواقع. بالجامعة أغلبها كانت أكاديمية. يعني بالEFE مثلا كيف الواحد يكون نفسه، كيف يعتمد على نفسه، كيف يعمل كتيم، بتدخلك سوق العمل مباشرة. بالجامعة أغلبه أكاديمي ومش يعني ما بتدخلك على سوق العمل.
Okay, again, EFE had its advantages. It gave you certain skills that really help you to get your first job, while the university gives you general education. It prepares you for the market, but EFE gave you more skills to get you to your first job. Amal, would you like to answer this question?
Yes. تجربتي مع الاي اف اي كانت هي عباره عن تدعيم. احنا في المسابقه عندنا بالتخصص كنا ندرس عن الاي اف اي بالمساقات نفس ما هي بتدرسنا، وكنا ناخذها كمثال يعني، خصوصا مساق الحملات اخذناها كمثال وانا تعرفت عليها من خلال التدريس. وانما هي لما رحت جربتها شخصيا يعني تدعيم للكلام اللي اخذناه نظري، تعرفنا على الاشخاص، كونت الصوره بذهني عمليا يعني، اخذت عنها نظريا ورحت شفت الواقع عندهم كيف بالضبط.
What we learned in the university is more of to be theoretical. With EFE, we had more of the applied, and they gave us skills, applications that were very beneficial for us. A third question, again, Amal and Alqam, is how did you hear about EFE? كيف سمعتوا عن المؤسسة الفلسطينية؟ من وين سمعتوا؟
أبدأ أنا؟
تفضلي يا أمل، ladies first نعطيكي.
أنا زي ما حكيت لك إنه إحنا أخذنا عنها بالمساق، يعني أخذناها كنموذج مثال طبقناه بتطبيق عملي في المساق، وحبيت بعد ما نخلص المساق هو كان آخر فصل لنا اسمه مساق الحملات، أخذناها كنموذج يحتذى به. وبعدين بلشت أنا لما أخذناها مثال يعني عجبتني الفكرة، وبلشت أدور وين هي موجودة وين ممكن أروح. أنا لأني بساكنة بجنين مش كتير النشاطات في المناطق الشمالية بتكون، فأول فرصة اتاحت في رام الله رحت على رام الله عشان أتعرف. يعني أنا كنت قاصدة إني أجرب التجربة، فرحت على رام الله، كان في إلي قريبة ساكنة في رام الله، وخطت التجربة يعني من رام الله عشان إحنا هون بالشمال مش موجودة كتير.
Amal says, I live in Jenin, which is in the northern part of the West Bank, and there are not a lot of opportunities in Jenin. It was the last semester at my university doing a special course, and then I started looking around, and I found an opportunity in Ramallah with EFE, and I stayed with friends and family, and I took the course with EFE. Alqam?
طبعا أنا بعد ما روحت من رحلة العلاج ولسه يعني كنت أبني بحالي، كنت كثير يعني أتبع دورات وأبحث عن دورات وهيك، لأنه البني آدم تعرف بده يطور من حاله ويرجع لحياته الطبيعية. فكنت أظل أفتش بالصدفة على الفيسبوك، شفت لهم إعلان، ففتت على الاي اف اي وبلشت يعني اراسلهم لحتى قبلوني واتدرب عندهم.
Okay, after the 3-year period of my recovery, I started looking around, and I saw on Facebook an advertisement by EFE, and I started communicating with EFE, and through that I got my training. Shukran Alqam, shukran Amal. Ms. There is a question for me and you, and I will give you the first opportunity. The question is from Mr. Amar Abdullah, and he says, based on your experience, what more can EFE do to support more inclusiveness of people of determination?
I think it's a challenge. It has always been a challenge for EFE to reach more youth, because it's a challenge of funding, a challenge of partnership, and because we don't want to just train the youth, we want to also place them in jobs, right? And now, given more so the challenges of post-COVID-19, so now we have new challenges. I think it's really a matter of how the private sector has the appetite to employ people of determination. I believe it should come first by raising awareness of the benefits that you would get as a private sector. So perhaps maybe EFE can hold awareness sessions or workshops for corporates. to talk to them about inclusion and diversity, how inclusion and diversity in the workplace and embedding it in their DNA is quite important. And then you build the momentum slowly, you change the mindset and the perception, and you change the narrative to seeing people of determination just people, because they are people. So it's about their skills and what they can do in the job. It's not about their disability, it's about their abilities. So it's really a mind shift and changing the narrative. And I think we do have a great opportunity. EFE exists in 9 countries, if I'm not mistaken. We have board members in each and every country. We have board members from different sectors. We have a lot of people that we can call upon to come and talk about the inclusion and diversity in the workplace and the meaning of inclusion and diversity when it's done right. So we can call on our supporters and our subject matter experts and influencers to engage more private sectors and engage more public sector on taking on more of people of determination as people, because they are people with determination. They are people with abilities, like we see Amal and Alqam and so many others. So I hope that answers your question, but it's really a matter of partnership, and it's not just EFE's effort, it's everyone's effort together to help EFE get the job done, really.
Thank you, Ms. Mariam. We have a question from Catherine Honeyman, and she says, thank you for this interesting discussion. Which types of businesses have you found most willing to work with you on employing youth with disabilities? I think I will answer this question. You know, we have worked very closely with call centers, and call centers have given us a lot of opportunity to find our youth to work with them. Also, I should say that the Palestinian law gives opportunity to those of people of determination, because it forces NGOs and governmental organizations and ministries to employ at least 5% of people with determination and disabilities. Also, for the private sector, the Palestinian Authority gives tax breaks to those companies that employ youth with determination and disabilities, and that they would reduce their salaries, part of their salaries, from their taxes. So these are some incentives, I would say, and some companies, organizations. But I should also say that most of the companies are very supportive in Palestine. It is I think it is a cultural thing, and we are very, very proud of that. Okay, there are lots of questions, but I would like to, I think we are almost running out of time, and we would like to answer all of your questions. However, I apologize for that, and we will answer your questions, you know, maybe written, so that you can get more of those answers. As we come almost to the end of our discussion today, I would like to ask Mariam to give us her closing thought about this.
Thank you, Saro. If you don't mind, there is one question that I will answer, and then I will give my closing remarks in a nutshell, because I don't want to. I'm conscious of time. There was a question asking about the role of media when it comes to highlighting the successful stories from the field. Be it with EFE or other organizations. you know, honestly, the role of media is huge. We reach every home. We speak to everyone. We have a large audience, and especially with NBC, we are the leading conglomerate when it comes to the region. We have created campaigns with EFE and other organizations that focus on the youth empowerment and focus on very noble missions such as socioeconomic development and creating opportunities for the fresh graduates. The stories have to be real. We need to talk about Amal and Alqam and Shireen and XYZ. We need to use real stories. We created a campaign together, or an initiative called the First Job Campaign, talking about what Alqam mentioned today, which is how do you feel when you get your first job? We have realized that audiences or viewers, be it on the digital media or the linear TV, they respond to real stories. They get inspired by real stories. And I urge every organization from EFE onwards, and I know EFE heard it so many times from me, and I can see the shift of communication really taking center stage. Every organization that is working for a noble cause, that has a mission, speak, tell your story. You have social media now. You don't need really TV. You can use TV, but social media, this device is in everyone's hands now. Use your voice. Use your real stories' voices. Tell their stories. It will really engage a lot more audience, and it will engage a lot more partners to come on board and help you with your mission. So digital media or TV is quite important. If you are in the TV or in the media industry and you're listening to us today, please get in touch with EFE and try to tell their story, because they are impacting hundreds of lives in the region. Now, my closing remarks are around this subject, because I am in the media field, and storytelling for me is quite a passion. I like to tell stories. And so, you know, my real message here is to Alqam and Amal and all the other young people that are listening to us today. Please tell your story, because your story is inspiring. Yeah. Don't be shy to talk about your story. Don't be shy to talk about your challenges, because you will inspire someone. Alqam, you inspired me today, but you could inspire so many others that are facing the same issues, not just in Palestine, but it could be anywhere else in the world. Today we have international attendees. We have people from all around the world. We had 120 plus people listening to you today, because you're important, because what you're doing is very important, because your grit and your resilience and your love for life gives us hope. So tell your story, create your own social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Tell your stories, inspire people, because when you tell your story, you will inspire others to help people like you, yeah, and to help more people get jobs and to help spread this goodness and kindness that we all need, especially post COVID-19. So with that, I conclude, and I thank EFE for always giving me an opportunity to listen to beautiful stories and to contribute just a tiny bit of what positiveness and beautiful energy that you're spreading. So thank you so much, Saro. Thank you, Larissa. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, everybody, for giving me a chance to be part of EFE.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mariam. It is a partnership, and you have been a wonderful, great partner. Thank you, and thank you, MBC. Before closing, I would like one sentence from Amal and one more sentence from Alqam to inspire your friends. Amal, كيف ممكن تشجعي أصدقائك؟ بجملة بسيطة.
بجملة بسيطة. Let's write can be taken by doing duties of usually qualities. So if you impose yourself with respect, you will respect anyone.
Thank you, Amal. Alqam, one last word. كلمة أخيرة بسيطة لزملائك.
أنا بحب يعني أوجه رسالتي خصوصا للأشخاص دول إعاقة، إنه مهما تكون صعوبة الإشي اللي أنت فيه اللي جاي أحلى. وإذا أنت قررت فأكيد قرارك هذا راح يطلعك من الجو اللي أنت فيه. فأنت بتكون عبارة برضو عن مسج لأشخاص ثانيين غيرك، يعني بكونوا هم مش قادرين يحققوا اللي بدهم إياه، فأنت بتكون رسالة لإلهم.
شكرا Alqam. Thank you, Alqam. Alqam says that for his friends that are full of determination, to be full of determination because they have to make the decision. And so once you make the decision, you can overcome anything. And once you overcome anything, you will find out that everything was easy and you can do everything that you wish to do. As my concluding remarks, dear participants, we request from our communities, first of all, understanding, and secondly, participation to be supportive. Unfortunately, there are stigmas. People perceive that those with disabilities do not have skills and competencies. They look at what they cannot do rather than what they can do, the huge potential they have. It is expected from families, friends, teachers, employers to be supportive. We should give them the option to choose between the traditional career path of vocational training and other, and new career opportunities using the new technological advances. At EFE, we are supporting them by giving them the tools to start their first job, by offering them soft skills training, technical skills training, and linking them to employers and to start their own ventures. So our youth can feel comfortable to communicate, to reach out and follow their dreams. It is not enough to say we support and we have inclusive policies. We have to be accessible. Accessibility is as important as inclusiveness. Therefore, I would like to ask you to check out EFE.org for all information and to follow us on the social media. Your donations will help us support the youth to get their first jobs. Please partner with us in our future programs. Together, we can champion more success stories with more EFE alumni, currently more than 100,000 around the MENA region. We, for alumni such as Saja, such as Muhammad, such as Walid, they are all names and persons. They are all inspiring youth. I would like to thank the EFE boards across the continents, the EFE staff, the CEOs, and the partners for making EFE a reality. Let me also thank EFE-Palestine's staff and board with its chair, His Excellency, Mr. Mazen Sonokrot. I would like to thank Larissa and Jenna for putting the special effort to make this possible today. And especially to Mariam, Amal, and Alqam for inspiring us with this beautiful audience. And before closing our event, join us together to wish a great visionary and the founder of EFE, Mr. Ron Bruder, a happy birthday. It's on the 26th of February. Happy birthday, Ron. And we close our session with this beautiful note. Thank you very much.